What's UConn's recruiting strategy? You're locked on.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A little housekeeping. My YouTube support has been amazing. I'd love to have all my subscribers download the audio version. It's equally as important for helping the channel and the Locked On audience grow. I'm going to press this little button here. If you love the podcast, make sure you subscribe. Let this little ticker run so that you guys can see it. First, click that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen, and then head over to Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Hit the follow button. This way, you'll never miss a moment of Locked On UConn. Can't tell you how much this support means to me. It's everything. If you're tuning in from your car, once you finish, please drop us a 5-star review. Good reviews trigger referrals for similar shows where we can get some new audience members who are interested in more UConn content. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So UConn's recruiting strategy, what is it? I started to get curious about players when people on Twitter or I would get YouTube comments. It's like, well, I haven't heard about this player, and it looks like they offered him. So I have a history of covering high major, low major basketball for the last few years independently. So I decided to kind of go into my bag and see who I could talk to anonymously, of course, because look, no one wants to give away the trade secrets of their team or others, but it's a pretty consensus talk to about 3 or 4 coaches on this specific topic of recruiting in the NIL era with the transfer portal as a kind of overlay, if you will. But recruiting high school players, it's pretty much, I think the impetus was, people were saying, well, why is UConn in a great example is the number one pick in, or not number one pick, maybe the number one pick next year's draft, or the following year is AJ DeBonsa. I looked up his spelling. That's the first yawn of the day. I looked up his spelling and his phonetic, how you say it. There's actually a YouTube clip of him actually saying, how do I say my name? The T is silent. So it's AJ DeBonsa. And so for all those that give me crap about not being able to pronounce his name, I said it right for the first time, probably. So this is what I heard from multiple coaches. You cast a wide of a net as humanly possible because everyone is going to transfer at least once. Sad reality. Most coaches feel that way. And unfortunately, not everyone is at UConn's level where they keep an entire class like UConn did last year. But I'm curious to see what happens with this incoming recruiting class. And when we kind of dive into this, does UConn retain all 4 of the players that are on this current team for the following season? And I just found it a really interesting topic because the thought process behind most college coaches is maybe you get, you offer, however many, depending on the level of culture of your team, where you feel as if the kids are going to transfer a bunch of times. So this need to recruit below your level as well as above your level. So this doesn't really apply to UConn in the respect, except for below your level. So what I mean by that is I think the recruiting of below your level is 4-star and maybe like 1 or 2 3-stars where you feel like there's a big raw potential where a kid could advance pretty quickly. So you need to recruit those guys because if they don't pick you and they go to, let's say, a mid-major and they average 20 points a game, you have that kind of relationship already where you had them hot and heavy. Maybe they visited you or, at least got a verbal offer, et cetera. So it only serious targets, for senior guys. So, and then there's obviously the portal. Who can we get involved with? Who did we previously recruit? What are our roster needs? So after those 3 questions are answered, it's all about a money negotiation with the NIL. So it ends up being more speed dating than it is recruitment. Again, unlimited visits. So you kind of make it rain when it comes to that when they're juniors. and then you try to squeeze them in on making a decision once they get to campus. So that's kind of the whole rigmarole. So let's talk about this casting a wide net. Last year, UConn offered 17 players. This year, the current number is 13. The year before, it was 21. So that tracks. I think the above and below the level, you kind of, I go back to what Dan Hurley said in his media availability. You kind of already know what you're getting. And some players are either a little bit better or a little bit worse than what you thought. And then you kind of go into it with an open mind from that perspective. I think the sad part of all of this is you like to think none of your players, especially at UConn now, are ever going to transfer. But you have to have that in the back of your mind. In a perfect world, we have what just happened, right? Apostolos Romelu, I'm pretty sure I ruined his last name, but all the best, went to Richmond, wasn't going to get a lot of run here. That was our transfer. The other vacancies are guys who went to the professional ranks. So that's kind of the hope. The best case scenario for a UConn is you're getting transfers to plug in spots like Aiden Mahaney, but you're not doing it because you lost a huge piece to a rival or to, a lower level school because they weren't getting enough playing time. So I think that's the biggest thing. So you have to look at it from that perspective. We've had a really great run with transfers between Joey Calcaterra, who's now playing with the TBT, won a national championship. Tristen, who won 2 national championships, and now in the summer league with the Indiana Pacers, 2nd round pick. Cam Spencer, who is absolutely lighting up the summer league. I saw Gary Parrish do a piece on Cam talking about how he elevates that entire roster. And I have to say, I made a comment in my draft process of how I was breaking down these players. Whoever picked Cam was going to make the best decision they ever made from a GM perspective because he brings that energy. And Gary crystallized it pretty well. I'm not a huge fan of Gary Parrish, but I appreciate him giving Cam the love because it's undeniable. He is undeniable as a basketball player, and he's showing it on the basketball court. So that's another transfer, obviously. And now you have Aiden Mahaney, who I said this the other day. His ceiling as a player is Reed Shepherd. He is he could be a top 5, top 10 pick. He's a rising junior. He'll be I think he has 3 years eligibility, 2 potentially. I'm pretty sure that's the case. So Aiden is coming in off of a 13 or 14 point season at St. Mary's. He has that type of game, that wiggle, the ability to rise up and shoot. He's twitchy. I think he's got some really great skill sets that is going to make Husky fans fall in love with him. And obviously Tarris Reed. So who I think is being compared to Adama Sanogo. Why not go to the school that made Adama a pro? And also talk about a guy who's dominating the summer league, Adama Sanogo, double all day long, right? We're going to talk the big board of offers, who they've made offers to already, and make some parallels to how many offers is based on how much you trust your team's culture, i.e. less transfers, which is kind of what UConn is known for. There's not a ton of mass exodus. And we'll be right back coming up after this. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sporting like we want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Okay, we're back on Locked On UConn. I'm your host here, Mark Zanetto, talking about UConn's recruiting strategy and the big board that is their offer list. Last year, in 2023, they had 21 offers and 5 signees. So 2023 had the class of Jaden Ross, Youssef Singari, Stephon Castle, Solomon Ball, Jalen Stewart. We don't need to belabor the point. But we also recruited guys like TJ Power, who went to Duke and then transferred out. Who else was a big name, was a 5-star? Justin Edwards, who just went undrafted, but was a top 10 recruit. Went to Kentucky. Calipari ruined him. Big shock there, right? One of my favorite players, or two favorite players in the transfer portal this year, Scotty Middleton and Andrei Stojakovic. Both were offered by UConn. And both, I thought, would have been nice additions to UConn in the transfer portal. They obviously didn't go that way, and that's perfectly fine. They know better than I. But it's one of those things where when we talk about, when we get to that transfer portal conversation, when we get to recruiting, I think through the lens of Dan Hurley, who in his staff, who was he looking for? And those were the type of players that I knew they offered. And it tracks with what college coaches told me, which is, it's almost like the transfer portal is always open. And we'll talk about that in the last segment, which is, you've already created a relationship in the recruiting process. So it's a lot easier for people to tamper, number one, but it's also a lot easier for you to communicate with guys who are essentially available. Right. And then the other one that I thought was a big transfer, or a big recruit that they didn't get, was Yves Nisi. If you're not familiar with him, and I'm probably ruining his name, 6'11" kid, probably 7-footer from Baylor. Did he just get drafted, or was he still on Baylor? I'm talking to myself. Let's see. He's from Cameroon. Yeah, he got drafted. He was a monster. He's a guy that they offered, obviously last year they didn't get him in 2023, but he would have fit right in. He is essentially a Samson Johnson clone, and it's likely the reason why I believe Samson Johnson will end up being drafted following next season, because he's now what this guy Misi's physique is now. He's up to 225. He's got that same kind of twitchy rim runner, blocker of shots, the ability to kind of take someone off the dribble quickly, not like I'm breaking someone down from the free throw line extended, et cetera, et cetera. So I digress. Then we go into the 2024. Obviously, we have Liam McNeely, Ahmad Noel, Isaiah Abraham, who looks fantastic, by the way, as the signees. But they did have 17 offers, and those offers were as follows. So let's see, 2023 and 2024 class. Obviously, we all know about Cooper Flagg, but we had Patrick Ngoba from Duke. He went to Duke. Boogie Fland was an Arkansas commit. Let's see, who are some other folks? Tyler Betsy was right in our backyard. He went to my buddies over at Cincinnati. And when I say my buddies, I'm friends with Wes Miller and some of his staff. So don't get it twisted. If we played Cincinnati tomorrow, I'm telling everybody that Connecticut's going to kick their tail, but you get the point. A lot of wide net. Think about these guys: Joseph Sonnen, who went to Arizona State, Billy Richmond, who's at Arkansas, or a verbal commit to Arkansas. Liam obviously came to us through kind of a circuitous route, right, where he committed to Indiana and then came back. Some folks that are at Elijah Moore is a Syracuse guard that is going to be on their team next year. So look, there's guys who are all over the gamut, all over the country. This is what UConn does. The tally is the majority of these guys are 4 stars. So also the thought process of you almost recruit down a level so that you can progress and also have things to teach them. And you get a player that is hungry to come in and prove themselves. The only 5 stars that were offered last year were Liam, VJ Edgecombe, who went to Baylor or signed with Baylor, Boogie Flan, Aiden Sherrill. That's it. So they only offered 3 5-stars. Now they're coming off back-to-back national championships. Let's take a look at the 2025 13 offers they have so far. But before we do that, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels. That part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. So 2025, there's 13 offers. In my mind, they're likely looking to sign 2 or 3 of these guys. And the list is essentially littered more with 5 stars than I thought there would be. But there's more 4 stars than 5. I mean, you can track this, guys. And if you all can do this on your own. Go to either one of the various recruiting sites. I confirmed this. This is who we know of. But look, I'm just going to count how many 4 stars there are, and it'll be around the exact same model. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 of the 13 are 4 stars. Now, are there a couple tweeners there like Tande Yusufo, who's a 4-star, but in some recruiting websites he's a 5-star, so that's like a tweener, right? Same thing with Braylon Mullins. He's on the edge of that 5-star. So is Ahmad Noel, by the way, who's coming in as a freshman. I think everyone thinks that he was a better player than Bronny James, who was technically a 5-star and a McDonald's All-American. So I don't see the so sometimes the outside entities, as our boy Dan Hurley calls them, get it wrong. But as far as who they're going after, the upwards and downwards of a 4 or a 5-star, it tracks. Nicolo Bandalo, who essentially is a 6'11" power forward / wing, who's a good shooter, who can kind of do it all, and it's a huge rising star, is going to be a 5-star before it's all said and done. Chris Seanock Jr. is a 4-star, but he's likely more of a 5-star. So all of these guys are top 50, top 60 players. Eric Ryby, Nicolo Bandolo, Chris Seanock Jr., Darius Acuff Jr., Darius Adams. There's a guy we haven't talked about who's a point guard out of Chandler, Arizona, who's a pretty solid player, Jeremiah Fears. There's a Caden Lewis who has UConn in his top 8, I believe. Braylon Mullins, who's likely going to take a visit. He's said he wants to take a visit to UConn. We'll see if that happens. Then you have our boy Malik Thomas, who I believe will be our first commit, who's a 5-star. I think the biggest underrated 5-star of this entire class is Nate Ament, the 6'7" wing from Warrington, Virginia. He's undecided. Obviously, he has not put out a list. And then there's our boy AJ DeMonsa. When you watch AJ DeMonsa's film, you kind of understand why he wants to come into college and say, I want to be featured. I know people hate that. I get that. I totally understand that, especially with the culture that Dan Hurley has brought to UConn, has brought to the University of Connecticut, where we don't kowtow to the star. He probably won't be a UConn player. I'll just say that from just I've seen this too many times where we see this player, he's linked to us, he starts saying some stupid stuff, or his team leaks out that he wants XYZ, and the coaching staff gets turned off. And guess what? After back-to-back national championships, they have every right under God's green earth to tell this guy to kick rocks. Go play at Arkansas, go get drafted number 1, losing the second round of the tournament or the first round, like Reed Shepherd. And Reed Shepherd's one where I could potentially see, if his parents weren't both Kentucky guards, that he's a guy who would have fit right in at UConn. I mean, the kid does everything that you're supposed to. He is a coach's dream, if we're being honest. And he's a legacy kid. It is what it is. But that's what I'm saying. So we have 13 offers going out right now. Looks like we're going to probably get Malik. I wouldn't be surprised if my pick on this is Malik Thomas is going to commit. Then I believe of this list of offers, it's going to come down to getting 2 or 3 others. An Eric Ryby would be ideal, especially because Creighton's sniffing around him. Be on the lookout for Nicolo Bandalo. I think that's a definite possibility. But Braylon Mullins, I mean, he makes the most sense. 6'5", just under 200 pounds, can come in and be another guy that's in that same mold of Aiden, Cam, Tristen. That's kind of where we're going, right? But also because we're going to lose Hassan Diarra next year, with him essentially losing. There's no more eligibility for him. Wouldn't surprise me if they offer a Darius Adams. He's listed as a shooting guard, but I think he can play both. And Darius Acup Jr., like these guys who are 6'2", 6'3" point guards, we're going to need more guys to come in and facilitate this offense. So I think that's why there's a few point guard shooting guards more so than wings and power forwards. But that would be my guess is you're going to sign 2 to 3 of these folks. We'll talk transfer portal. Yes, the transfer portal plays a big role even in recruiting after this. You're back on Locked On UConn. Big recruiting show today. We've talked a little bit about the strategy, where things stand as of right now. Malik Thomas is still crystal balling coming to UConn, according to multiple outside entities, including myself. We went over the fact that 2 years ago, UConn offered 21 folks, signed 5. Last year, they offered 17 folks. They signed 3. This year, there's 13 offers, and I would assume we're going to try to sign 2, if not 3 players off of that. You have to assume next year, even though we haven't played yet, you got to assume some folks are going to go pro. Maybe even some folks go pro early. If everything that these little videos show me is correct, you're looking at Jalen Stewart and Liam McNeely potentially leaving after 1 year, or with Jalen's situation, it'd be 2. So there's 2 guys you have to replace, likely with transfer portal folks. So how I would look at the transfer portal and what UConn is looking at is not necessarily the guys that we're offering last year, but potentially the 2023 list, right? So if these guys are still available and they're in the portal, if I'm UConn, my list is essentially looking at the TJ Powers, who I know he transferred already, but Cam Spencer was a 2-time transfer. A guy like TJ is a good shooter. He's a former 5-star. He can do a lot of different things. He can post you up. He can take you from 3. He's a good screener. He just went to a team in Duke where he just honestly made the wrong decision. Where is TJ right now? Let's see where he's at. Let's see if that's going to be a possibility. He transferred to, let's see. Why am I not seeing this? Did you go to Virginia? I believe that's right. TJ Power, Virginia. Yeah. So he's at transferred to Virginia. Good for him. Now, we all know how bad of an offense Virginia has. So he would definitely be in the mix for next season in the transfer portal. That's one I'd keep my eye on. And then I would go some of these guys. Let's go. Justin Edwards is gone. Yeah. Andrei Stojakovic also stuck around at he transferred to Cal from Stanford. So he's a West Coast kid, but we've done this before. Joey California, Aiden Mahaney. Give me Peja's kid. Give me Peja Stojakovic's kid, former McDonald's All-American. He'd be a huge transfer for UConn the following year. So that would be 2 guys. And then I think there would be another one that I would probably look at. So let's go. So those would be the guys we go. And then honestly, because he was offered before and he was one of my top guys coming this year, if we could have, I mean, not trying to tamper with Shaheen's team. That's happened plenty already. But Scotty Middleton transferred to Seton Hall. We're going to see him a lot this year. He's 6'7". He's rangy. He's got great instincts. I think he's an incredible defensive player. Probably needs to work on his shot a little bit. But that's another guy you could get in the transfer portal, the following season. So all of this breaks down to it's a really difficult time to be a coach, and there is nobody I'd rather have than Dan Hurley doing what he does, because he's going to weed out all of this. There could be some guys who we've offered that are kind of under the radar that he brings in later in the signing period. But Peach Jam is still going on right now. I think it ends on the 21st. So guys are still out there trying to raise their stock and really try to impress these coaches. So I appreciate Dan and Kamani and the staff for doing what they do, which is creating these relationships and getting us the players that we are excited about watching. So let me end the show by saying this has been another episode of Locked On UConn. I'm your host, Mark Zanetto, asking you to stay locked in, stay connected, make sure your toughness meter is always rising. And as always, go Huskies.